Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Play On GAA Podcast. Another interview. I have Luke here with me for this interview, and our special guest today is a St. Vincent's footballer, Dublin footballer, All-Ireland winner, Ger Brennan. Ger, how's it going?
Seamus, good. Luke, how are you, lads? Great to be on.
Right, so Ger, you're the head of Gaelic Games now in UCD, and all your focus is now really on that. You stepped away from the Carlow assistant manager job there not too long ago. How is life kind of just focusing on this kind of one task now?
It's great. Seamus, we're all very lucky and fortunate to be back playing and participating, and to have students on campus is a real blessing for them and obviously for us too, in terms of having actual work to do. It's been a fairly barren kind of year and a half for students in particular. So we're just delighted to be given the opportunity to be back in working with the students. So we've definitely noticed a big increase in numbers, particularly with the ladies' game, football in Camogie, massive increase in participation there. So just trying to make things sustainable financially to keep the whole club going and to provide opportunities for people to become part of the UCD GAA family. The motto that we have in the school is a home away from home, and I'm trying to ensure that whether they're the best player in the team or the worst player in the team, that we can provide some sort of meaningful Gaelic game opportunities for them to help settle in and to become part of the family. As you know yourselves, college lads, it can be a scary place when you're starting off in a university like UCD, when you to go to 35,000 people. It's a massive town, and you can feel quite lonely despite the number of people walking around campus. But it's only until you make meaningful connections that I guess you begin to settle down and become a bit happier with how life is going as well. So we're very, very happy to be back, Seamus.
Yeah, that's a very good point about the helping students kind of settle into life. Obviously, especially with a lot of people that would be kind of a bit shy, maybe a bit introverted, and then they're going into college, and probably the GAA is something that's kind of a comfort for a lot of people that can kind of help them make friendships straight away as they walk into a GAA team. And obviously you're the man overlooking it. I'd say you've seen plenty of examples of, you kind of see someone become not as shy through Gaelic Games.
No, absolutely. When you find a bit of a purpose within the university, and when you again come to a club or join a club where people care about you and you have an interest in you, you can't help but maybe develop and grow personally. We would do an awful lot of work with student coaches and student volunteers. We'd always have to go to 40 student coaches and volunteers involved in the club, and we help train them up where we can with the foundation course and a couple of them with the GA1 course. And so we certainly do our bit to help bring people on and help them feel part of the club.
Hi, Ger. So I was just kind of interested in that, because you've kind of moved into this situation where you've gone from being a player into overseeing a college kind of football for ladies and for men in colleges as well. So I was just kind of curious how you've evolved from going from that player into being any of your managerial experience as well, kind of in clubs too. So it's just the difference of how being a player and how that you managed to kind of transition into that role that you currently in there.
Well, look, there's a lot of things that really haven't changed within the GA world, particularly the overtraining of young players, the volume of games and teams that a talented player is part of, between club, county, college, fresher, senior, under 21, senior. So it's quite demanding for them. So my experience as a player, having gone through that kind of tough process from, I guess, 18 to 22, 23, I will be able to highlight and help young up and coming players understand the need to manage their load, to be able to say no, to ensure that they're not absolutely totally wrecked and picking up soft tissue injuries or overuse injuries when they do hit kind of the 22, 23 year age group. And then just from an academic and life point of view, trying to manage all those different responsibilities and commitments that they have, that I guess the importance of trying to plan your schedule as best as possible and prioritizing what needs to be done and just getting down and getting it done, trying to help students develop, I guess, being able to manage themselves is something that I've been able to take from my own playing days and into the college scene now.
And I have it that you actually initially left the Dublin panel yourself due to kind of concerns over player burnout. So would you kind of consider that as one of probably the greatest challenge that's facing county players right now?
It is something that it's not gone away just yet. It's kind of improving slightly with the work that the Gaelic Players Association will be doing, and it's just given the volunteer and amateur status of the GAA. It's never. I just can't see it changing to a point where if a fella is selected for senior to county team, that's the only team that he actually plays for, and that he's not being burdened and pulled and dragged elsewhere. But I just unfortunately don't see that changing, just given the amateur status that we maintain. But it is tough. It is tough for players, but it's just unfortunately part of the journey for them when you're talented.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, and especially to be a lot of that with kind of minors playing up for the seniors and stuff like that in clubs as well, and then going on to play with counties. But we'll move from this. We'll move to your career yourself. So obviously your club is St. Vincent's. How did you get into St. Vincent's? What age were you when you started? And can you remember who was kind of the main influence on you as your career was beginning?
Very good. Well, I started out with Nafina in Mulvey Road, under 13s and 14s. And I was more of a soccer family really growing up. And started playing the couple of months ago in St. Vincent's National School in Glasnevin, which would be a feeder school, I guess, to St. Vincent's and a couple of others around there. I started to Nafina, a GAA club. So I went up there with Mark Cooper, would be Johnny's older brother. We were buddies in school in the same class. So I went up there with Mark, played a couple of seasons in Nafina. Nafina weren't great at that age group. And with the soccer mentality, I guess, that we had, I started Belvedere College as well, and a couple of buddies were also playing with St. Vincent's. I ended up sneaking up the road, and I joined Vincent's at under 15s. Paddy Doyle would have been the manager there. The brother of Bobby Doyle would have played in the 70s. Yeah, that was it, like, you know.
So yeah, if you could maybe tell us a little bit about kind of how you initially broke into the senior team, kind of what kind of age were you, what position were you initially playing, and how did you find kind of the initial years and that transition from juvenile football and minor into senior football?
I didn't bother me too much, Luke. I definitely remember the first couple of senior club training sessions. The physicality was something I definitely noticed, and it just took me a couple of sessions to probably get up to speed that way. I was playing the rugby in school, so physically I had a fair bit of strength built up, I guess, from the gym and that. But just getting used to the hits and the pace and everything else, that just took a while to get my head around. But once I was able to do that, I didn't find it too hard at all, to be honest now.
Yeah, and you mentioned yourself there that you were kind of a soccer family growing up. Do you remember the stage that you kind of changed your mind and kind of went to the Gaelic football? Because, you know, it is a big switch, and obviously I've seen a lot of players that do the same thing. They're raised in a soccer family, and then they get playing GAA and they kind of don't look back.
I actually played schoolboy Premier all the way up, lads, with Belvedere and then Webster. And then I was playing the rugby as well and the Gaelic. So I was playing far too much, really. But I kept it all going till I was under 18s, and I played under 20s rugby too with old Belvedere. It was when I remember the senior cup year in Belvedere, I went back playing the under 21s with Dublin. I was absolutely brutal. My aerobic fitness was totally gone in terms of what's required for Gaelic games, and I really struggled to get back up to the condition that was required. But eventually I did get there. It wasn't the last stage really that I just made the decision to focus into one sport. And then when I was called into the kind of seniors then around 19 or that as well, Dublin, it's a big honour to be asked to get involved with the senior county team. So we're just going to put my eggs into one basket that way, like, you know. So.
And look, so I was just wondering if we could bring it to kind of probably what was your first like big success was probably that 2008 All Ireland Cup win when you held off Nemo Rangers to win by points. That so you would have been quite young in that team and played centre half back. So I was just wondering if you could kind of maybe run through that whole All Ireland campaign and what it felt like to get over the line, kind of for the first. What would be your first All Ireland?
Luke, yeah, it was a wonderful experience and a wonderful journey. And it probably started in 2006 in the Dublin County Final. We lost to UCD in the Dublin Senior Championship Final, maybe 12-11. And a guy, Austin O'Malley, came on for UCD, kicked the winning points. He ended up joining us subsequently. But after that loss, we put in a serious shift with Mickey Whelan as manager. We trained like dogs really over the Christmas period. And we just hit the ground running in the new year. Who would we beat in the final? We beat St. Bridget's then by a point or two, which was a fairly tight game as well. And with some celebrations that week, we were drew out against Centralstown of Meath the following week in the first round of Leinster. And we drew them in Parnell Park. We were terrible. And they really should have bet us. But we got our act together for the following week to replay down in Park Tolchin in Navan. And we went on to win that, and the confidence just grew and grew. One of the biggest wins I think we had was against Crossmaglen in the semi-final that year. We played them probably in February 2008. Crossmaglen were going for maybe 2 or 3, if not 4 in a row, Club All-Ireland, or certainly 3 or 4 in a close period of time. And about a year previous to that, we had played Crossmaglen in a challenge match in the club. And they hockeyed us out the gate by about 20 points to beat them in Park Tolchin in the semi-final. That was a huge achievement. And the All-Ireland final against Nemo, probably still a bit of a blur in terms of the day itself. But when the final whistle goes, it's just a wonderful feeling. I can still kind of remember that. And then just the celebrations afterwards were just mad, you know. But no, it was great. It was great for the club, and a lot of tough games in the build up to it. A lot of tight games, but we had a team ethic and a great leadership management with Mickey Whelan at the helm. We could over the line, you know.
And I was just wondering as well, so like how tiring was that whole process from winning every single game in your county championship to going straight into games against the top teams and all across the country where you're travelling up and down? And like you don't have a single easy fixture from then. So how drained were you by the end of that when you finally did get up the line against Nemo?
I wasn't one bit drained, Luke. It was an amazing. I was privileged to be part of that setup. When you win tight games, Luke, the good feeling and energy that nearly explodes from those kind of victories. It's just enriching. It's fulfilling, and you know you count yourself very lucky to that you are in that situation, because in sport you end up losing far more than you win. You know, it was just a huge whirlwind and kind of roller coaster with an awful lot of ups, and the celebrations afterwards then were wonderful then as well. If the season isn't going too well, it can be difficult, all right, and you can be delighted to actually finish up to get a break. But when you're winning, you just want to keep on going.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Obviously, following that Club All-Ireland win, like that was a sensational Vincent's team. You had Mossy Quinn in that team. Obviously, then you had Pat Gilroy as well, Dermot Connolly. But following that, obviously your teammate Pat Gilroy then at the very end of 2008, after Dublin were knocked out by Tyrone, Pat Gilroy is named as Dublin manager. In 2009, that's the year that I remember you really picking up the centre halfback spot from Brian Cullen, who'd had it for a good few years before.
Yeah.
And to people, especially very young people listening now, the landscape of Dublin football was so different back then. We'd garnered kind of a reputation as being a bit of a hype team. You know, crowds would be absolutely full, 84,000 or whatever to watch a Leinster final. And then we get to play a Kerry or a Tyrone, and then we'd be beaten. And coming into that team, especially when you knew Pat Gilroy and he was becoming manager, did you kind of know that he was going to completely shake up the panel the way that he did?
I didn't really know. to be honest, Seamus, all you're hoping for is to be given a fair go and crack the whip to prove yourself. I'd been 3 years in with Pillar Caffrey. I played most of the National League games on the Pillar, but I was only getting snippets of game time from Championship. That was something which, as an up and coming player, you think you should be getting more of a run, but obviously the manager has to pick what he's seeing in front of him. When a new manager comes in, Seamus, I actually figured that Pat would probably try to ride us, the Vincent's lads, a bit more, so he wouldn't be seen as being overly one-sided to his own team or his own club. So that's kind of what happens. He really squeezed any of the St. Vincent's fellas in training and games, and if you weren't meeting the standards, you were duly told, and there was a fairly equal system from my perspective of it. You know, in fairness to Pat and all the guys that they did push hard, they always got a great response from them. The proof was in the pudding in terms of actually making the breakthrough in 2011.
Yeah, and talk to me about those first 2 years under Gilroy. They're both kind of extraordinary years, really, in terms of Dublin Gaelic football. It was 2009 was almost the typical year for Dublin in the 2000s. Win the Leinster title, obviously got by a bit of a scare against Kildare in the Leinster final, but then Kerry just destroyed Dublin that day, and they were epic. Like, that team was class. Was there an element of almost awe about them that day? Declan O'Sullivan, Colin Cooper, when these guys were in full flight.
I never would have been in awe of any of them, really, myself. I certainly would have admired them and would look to the standards that they played at and look to, at the very least, meet them and match those standards with a view of driving it forward from there. But my thoughts on these type of things is there's nothing wrong in looking at the best team out there and trying to learn from what they're doing, as opposed to what would you call, I guess, maybe bad mouthing them or everything else that can kind of happen sometimes. But from our point of view, or my point of view, you were looking at these guys and saying that these are a wonderful set of players. Now, I was actually suspended for that day, the semi-final or the quarter-final against Kerry. I had a bit of a misdemeanor in the Leinster final against Kildare, so I was eating cornettos in the stand, and so maybe I was lucky that I wasn't actually out there on the pitch,
And so ultimately, I suppose, when you're kind of thinking about how Dublin kind of got over the line eventually in 2011, I suppose a big part of that was probably the defensive system and solidity that kind of came with it, and that you were at the heart of that centre half back position, like holding kind of that structure. So if I could just kind of go back to the game against Meath, where Dublin shipped 5 goals and lost that game. Oh yeah,
so that was 2010, was it? Or no, that was 2010. Yeah.
And I was just wondering, so what impact did that have on the defensive system? And did you find that you got different instructions following that game on positional and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I remember that Mega. I think it was left wing back that day. He kind of touched on it earlier on, lads. One of you before 2011 that the Dublin team probably had higher opinions of themselves than they had earned, because ultimately we hadn't won anything, So bar the Leinsters, which were obviously big back then too, but them were trying to go and push on to win All Ireland. The work rate as a group from 2 to 15 and the outfield players, it was just something that it wasn't just up to scratch, and that was clear from that defeat against Meath, that guys just weren't working hard enough when we didn't have the ball. We were all nice footballers when we had the ball, but as a group we just weren't working hard enough when the opposition turned us over or won kickouts or whatnot.
Yeah, and then to go from that year, obviously then you came back, and I think the victory against Tyrone in the 2010 quarterfinal when O'Gara got the goal, and I think that was a massive turning point in the psychology of the Dublin players, because that was the first time really that, in a long time anyway, that we'd beaten a team where we really weren't expected to beat them. And then to go from there, obviously Cork were fantastic that year. But 2011, to get through the games that you got through, I mean, every game that year was quite a tough game, barring the Tyrone game. But just before we get to the final itself, I imagine the semi-final against Donegal was a bit of a mad game to play, because I just remember being at that game and seeing Donegal put 14 men behind the ball and how slow the game was being played at. How hard was it to kind of keep your discipline, keep your focus, and keep listening to the instructions that you'd been given up until that point?
Yeah, like that was something we hadn't seen before now against Senegal, and we knew they'd certainly be defensive, but didn't realise to that extent. You know, I think on our own kickouts, it was literally 5v4 in our favour for the kickouts, and they were just meeting us at the halfway line. So we struggled with it big time in the first half. We got good, clear instructions from management then at half time to try to keep the ball wide and avoid the contact. And then you had Kev Mack then, who was coming into flying form and was out to break the line and cause a bit of havoc for the Donegal defence. And once we didn't go too far behind on the scoreboard, we knew that we should be okay. We just stuck to the game plan. But I suppose it comes down to the importance of trusting in the plan and not panicking, not losing sight of what it is you've been asked to do by the coaches, and just trusting in the way they've set you up. That's the thing that you have to follow, and that's all we did in that day.
And look, I suppose that leads us directly onto the final, which is probably one of the most infamous finals ever, due to nature, the long nature of them. We're waiting, Fluxon's kick and everything, and of course you're a tussle with Donaghy at the end. So how did it feel kind of to be involved in a game like that, like with the whole factors, with the weight, everything like that, and the dramatic nature of Cluxton at the end?
So look at, Kerry, I think we're 4 points up with 10 or 12 to go, and they were kind of playing all the football at that stage. But thankfully, through hard work and practice and repetition, we had a very strong mental resolve in that we would stick to the task and keep going to the final whistle. And if we won, we won. If we didn't, we didn't. But thankfully, in that occasion, we physically, I think we broke Kerry down over the course of the 70-odd minutes, which allowed us to and Kev Mack in particular to create those opportunities. Some wonderful scores as well. Kevin Nolan wing back, Bernard Brogan, a few lovely scores. Kev McMillan's goal, and then Stephen Cluxton's point at the end. But in the lead up to those last couple of scores, you had great pressure out the field and work with from Alan Brogan and Keane O'Sullivan, and just fellas getting little hands in, which was forcing the turnovers. And to see Alan tackle like that, probably you wouldn't have seen it in the previous years. But in fairness, he put the head down, as all the forwards did. We knew the importance that, regardless of what position you were in the field, that everyone was a defender when the opposition had the ball. But no, it was a huge relief and a huge monkey off the back. But also to beat Kerry, who are still the aristocrats of Gaelic games, to actually beat them was a superb achievement, and we were just thrilled to have them won by such close margins, but also to have bet them as well.
100%. And 2011 obviously was a year of history. 2 years later, the landscape of Dublin Gaelic football was even more different in 2011. Jim Gavin came in, and I just remember the hype around the Dublin team that year. The young lads, McCaffrey, Kilkenny, these amazing minors coming through. You were still there at the heart of the defence yourself. You played in probably the best game of Gaelic football that I've ever seen in the semi-final in 2013. Yeah. That was amazing. Yeah. And then talk to me, as well as that game, your point in the All-Ireland final. I remember off the right boot against Mayo. Yeah. That's probably the best point I've ever seen from you. And just talk to you, scoring a point on All-Ireland final day, a point as significant as that as well, at a time when Dublin did need a score. Is that something that you'll kind of take to the grave?
No, it's lovely to have contributed all right, Seamus, that way, and wouldn't have been known for kicking points at all. I guess going into that, or after that Mayo final, certainly going into it, I was under pressure because I didn't have a wonderful game in that semi-final. I was getting the run around from the Gooch, and obviously an unbelievable talent himself, a wonderful player and a lovely bloke as well. A few times I've met him outside of football, so I was just delighted to have gotten myself back into kept my spot in the 15, and then to contribute in whatever way possible was wonderful. When the score goes over, you're probably not overly excited. The the way I would be about it, because you're just conscious of getting back to your position and setting up for the opposition kick out, and not getting too carried away, because there was another, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of football to be played, so, but whatever, a couple of years later, it is obviously nice to you can enjoy that experience, knowing that the results isn't going to change,
I suppose what we kind of seen here is like the amount of kind of achievements that you've had between the club and county as well. One of the first things I kind of think about when I think about yourself and Vincent would be that 2014 final too, where I suppose that was the Conley final, where it was he gave the exhibition that day and stuff.
Oh, he's class, yeah.
That was probably one of the most kind of clinical All-Ireland displays we've ever kind of seen. So I was wondering, was that maybe the most satisfactory club win you've had, or county win? How would you kind of maybe compare the two?
Yeah, well, they're very different, Luke, in terms of comparing an All-Ireland club win with an All-Ireland county win, and they're different, I guess, for a couple of reasons. Like when you win with the club, it is a very, very special, intimate occasion where you're playing with guys who I know in my case I was a bit of a late starter, but you've been playing with fellas from a young age, coming up through the ranks. Everyone knows each other intimately, and everyone knows the families well. As a player, an individual, everyone with maybe ambition or the bit of talent, God-given talents you want to get to the highest level possible, which is obviously senior to county. So to put on a Dublin jersey at senior level, I remember my first game, I think it's 2006 against Offaly, down in Offaly, opening some pitch over the winter, and it was one of the best feelings I would have ever had. Right up there, we're winning the club championship and the senior All Ireland in the county stuff. So to go out and perform at the highest level and to win, maybe to help people understand it, is when you win with the club and you go into the clubhouse afterwards in the bar, everyone knows you properly. You know your family, you know them, you know their kids, you know the partners and all that type of thing. When you go into a bar after an All-Ireland win, you don't necessarily know everyone that's there, but they know you. And while they're wishing you well and saying well done, it is definitely a different kind of feeling that you have. But both are great. It's a bit like waking up on Christmas morning as a kid, waiting to see what Santa brought you. That's the way I've always tried to help people understand that feeling of winning an All-Ireland with your club and your county,
Yeah, no, it must be great now in retired life to kind of be able to look back at the achievements that you had, and obviously you've stepped away since. And I always imagine like you went from, the crazy last 10 minutes in the All Ireland final against Kerry in 2011, the same against Mayo in 2013. Those crazy moments. To then go to retirement. Is it in any way? Is it a difficult transition to go from being the centre half back for Dublin to kind of watching on from the stands? Do you still watch the games and kind of wish you're out there?
You would. It's a very hard thing to do. I still wanted to play, but my body was giving up with a couple of sports surgeries. I think I had 3. Well, I did have 3 between the groin and the Achilles, all in that same period, 2013-14. So I struggled through 2015 as much as I could, but I had to pack it in then at the end. I just wasn't able to maintain the training requirements. Just the body kept breaking down and just overuse injuries, I guess. And we were in 5 county finals in a row with the club. Obviously the All-Ireland runs, so there's never ever a break. And but look, I wouldn't change it either. Very lucky to have experienced those moments on the field. But definitely when you retire, it's like a girlfriend breaking up with you, and you don't want to break up, and it's hard. And but you have to get on and move to the next challenge, So
I'd say so just on kind of the next challenge, I suppose, is that you've had this experience kind of coaching lately and stuff like that with senior teams and stuff as well. And do you feel like that's something that you want to kind of keep doing and kind of keep progressing on?
No, definitely, Luke. I look at. I would have been teaching before I came to UCD. I love teaching. I love coaching. I love working with other coaches and other teachers and students and players and trying to help people develop and get better and coming up with different methods and ways to help guys improve. Whether it's harnessing the sports analysis or GPS stuff, how these how modern science can complement, I guess, instinctive coaching that a lot of the better coaches and managers would have. It is something that definitely does scratch the itch. It's nowhere near the joy of being a player, but it's just the next best thing at the moment. So that's why I am doing that at the moment. It's something I enjoy, and you're making new connections. You're facing new challenges and getting to know people, and all you're trying to do is to add a bit of value to the group that you're involved with, and make a few pals, and try and not fall out with anyone along the way, and it's as simple as that, so.
Yeah, 100%. And I really look forward to seeing what you do next in your career, Ger. Ger, thanks a million for coming on today. Really appreciate this.
Seamus, you're very welcome. And Luke, thanks so much, lads. Good to chat, and best wishes with everything. And I'll chat to you soon.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ger. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads. Cheers. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So guys, that was me and Luke's interview of ex-Dublin footballer Ger Brennan. We hope you enjoyed the interview, and until the next video here on Play On GAA, take care.